Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're going to be testing some new makeup brushes. These are the MODA Metallics brushes. They are made by a company called Royal & Langnickel. The MODA Metallics brushes are fairly new. These were sent to me as PR and I'm really excited to try them out. I love makeup brushes, so I thought it would be fun if we did kind of an unboxing, first impressions, and of course I'll give you all the info on these brushes along the way, but today we're going to test them out on my face. I already have my brows done and I'm also already wearing my Too Faced Hangover RX primer, and I used a little bit of this Becca brightening under eye corrector as well. I'm also wearing a little bit of my Clarins lip oil. This is in the shade Candy. I like to wear a balm or a lip oil on my lips while I get ready. So when I opened up this box, the first thing that I saw on top was this little piece of paper. It has a bunch of info on all the brushes inside and it says beautifully bold. And when I read that, I was like, beautifully bold metallic brushes in gold, silver, and rose gold. Does that remind you of anybody? Of course, my first thought was, are these gonna be a dupe for the Real Techniques Bold Metals brushes? I really love those brushes. These are definitely not a dupe for the Real Techniques Bold Metals brushes, other than some similar wording and of course, being metallic. These are not anything like the Real Techniques Bold Metals. These, first of all, they have like a textured handle. These are much more lightweight, and the Bold Metals brushes have white bristles. So these brushes are not made to look the same. They don't feel the same. I really would not in any terms say that these are a dupe for the Bold Metals. While the Real Techniques brushes are technically drugstore brushes, that particular line, the Bold Metals line, is pretty expensive. A lot of those brushes are $20 and up. These, I think the most expensive single brush in this line is $9.99. So these are much less expensive. The MODA Metallics line also offers a wider variety of brushes. It looks like the silver brushes are finishing brushes. There are 6 of those. There are 6 in the rose gold finish, and those are the complexion brushes. There's 11 of the gold brushes, and those are all eye brushes. And then there's one that's like a lilac, and that's the lip brush. They also sell these in kits. So it looks like there are 7 different kits, at least included in the PR materials here. I have 2 of them, so we're definitely gonna be testing those out. And it seems like those are a really good value as well. MODA brushes are for sale in Walmarts. I'm not sure if they're available in other drugstore type settings. If you've spotted them in another drugstore, please leave a comment and let us know so that we can look out for them there. But you can also order them from the website, and they have a UK-based site as well, so ordering in Europe is a little bit easier for you guys. I looked on the website and they do offer international shipping. However, the shipping costs are pretty high as usual, but at least they have the option for international shipping. I know a lot of companies don't ship everywhere, so just so you know, you can order these internationally. Now let's get to the fun part. We're gonna put some of this makeup on my face. I'm gonna start with this set. This is the 4-piece perfecting kit. It retails for $24.99 and it has the oval or toothbrush brushes. These haven't really been my favorite style of brush in the past, but I'm very open to trying. I'm gonna give them a fair shot. These say that they're for foundation, blush, contour, and concealer. I do want to mention that since I'm testing new brushes, I'm not going to test any new makeup items. So all the makeup that I'm using is tried and true. I've worn many times and I know how it should perform. That way there's no other variables other than the brushes. So I'm going to start with this Big Daddy brush and put my foundation on with it. It seems like it's picking up a lot of my product off of my face. I actually don't hate it. It doesn't look super streaky or anything. There are a couple spots where I know I'm gonna wanna go back and blend with a beauty sponge, like especially kind of around my nose where I feel like this big giant brush just can't really get in there. But I actually don't hate it. I've really not been a fan of these kind of brushes in the past, and as you can see, this one picked up a lot of my product off of my face, but it didn't really leave any streaks or any weird patches or anything like that. Okay. All right, I'm feeling open-minded. I did go back over my face with my Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge, and I do that no matter what makeup brush I use to blend out my foundation. It's just part of my routine. I have dry skin, so I really need that extra moisture and that extra little step of blending. So I don't think that's a diss towards this MODA brush at all. It's just something that I always do. I typically always use the sponge to blend out my concealer as well, but today I am gonna try to use this little concealer brush. So we're using a tried and true concealer. This is the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Glow Concealer. I love this stuff. And I'm just going to apply that and then I'll try to blend it out with the brush. Okay, here we go. Okay, I really actually liked this for my concealer. I felt like it was super easy. It picked up some of my product, as you can see there on the brush, but it didn't pull up a lot of product. It didn't mess with the foundation underneath, and I think it gave a really nice, smooth looking finish. I do not feel like I need to go back over this with a sponge. I'm gonna zoom in so that you can see it up close. I think that it gave me a really nice finish here. It doesn't look streaky at all. It looks really well blended. It was really quick. I like this little brush. I like this more than the foundation brush. Before I powder, I'm gonna add a little bit of my NARS liquid blush. This is the shade Torrid. I have been head over heels for these. I love these so much. I really like to apply them with a stippling brush, and I do have the stippler here. This retails for $8.99. It's duo fiber. It feels really soft and flexible, so this should do a great job of applying this blush. So I just put a little bit of that liquid blush on the back of my hand and swirled it around with my finger, and I'm gonna go straight in with this stippler and see how it goes. I think the blush went on really beautifully, really easy. I think it looks nice and blended. It didn't pull up any of my foundation. I mean, I'm impressed. I am so diehard for my e.l.f. small stippling brush, and I do think this one is just maybe a little bit larger than I would typically apply my cream blush with, but I don't think it looks crazy at all. I'm actually pretty impressed with this as well. Now I'm gonna powder. I'm gonna use my Next to Nothing pressed powder from MAC, and I'm gonna use this buffer brush. This one's also $8.99, and it feels really nice and soft and flexible, probably a little bit more dense than I usually use for a powder brush, but we'll see how it does. This worked well. It was just a regular powder brush. It's definitely not bad. It's just not really as much of a wow factor as the stippling brush or the concealer brush, but I mean, it worked. Pretty standard. Next up, we're gonna test the contour brush. This one retails for $7.99, and I'm gonna use this to apply my bronzer, and I'm just gonna go for a more targeted bronzer versus actually contouring. So we're gonna use a little bit of my Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer and see how this contour brush does. Once again, pleasantly surprised here. I usually like to use a bigger, fluffier brush for my bronzer because I like a more diffused bronzed look and not necessarily a chiseled contour look, but I actually think this looks really nice. It doesn't look overly sharp, which I have nothing against that look. It's just not what I personally tend to go for, but I'm actually really pleased with how this looks. I think it looks really natural. So if you're somebody that likes a more precise bronze look or a more like diffused contour look, then you would probably enjoy this brush. All right, we're finished with the face. I am really happy with how my makeup looks so far, and it's time for the eyes. This is the 5-piece eye kit. It does come with 4 brushes and then a stylish zip case. All of these brushes are available for purchase individually. However, if you buy the set, you do save just over $10, Plus you get this little case that comes with it. This set comes with the eyeshadow, super crease, brow, pointed liner, and then of course the little zip case as well. It seems like with all of their sets, you do save a decent amount of money. So if there are multiple brushes that you're interested in, then it seems like the sets really are the way to go. Today I'm gonna be using my Too Faced Natural Eyes palette. This is one of my favorite palettes in my entire collection, and there's really no way to screw up these eyeshadows, so we know that if they don't look good and they don't look blended, we know it's the brushes and not these shadows. I'm already wearing some Too Faced Shadow Insurance, so let's go ahead and put some of this eyeshadow on. I'm gonna start with the Super Crease brush, and I'm gonna use that to apply the shade Nudie to my crease. Now I'm gonna use the eyeshadow brush, which seems kind of gigantic to be a shader, but I'm gonna use that to work on the outer part of my eye. I'm mixing the shades Push Up and Cashmere Bunny from the palette. So 2 things so far. First of all, this brush is massive to be called a shader brush. I feel like I have a lot of lid space. I know many people complain about not having a lot of lid space, and I think this brush is just a little bit too big. I wish it was smaller. And I've also noticed that with the eye brushes in particular, when I pick up product and then tap off my brush, almost all of the pigmentation kind of falls off of the brush, and I find myself needing to dip into the shadows a lot more frequently than I usually do. But with that being said, so far I think the blending looks nice. These are really soft. I don't feel like they're poking or like tugging at my eye at all. So let's finish this eye look and see how I feel at the end. I'm just gonna use Honey Pot on my finger. I'm gonna do my inner corner with this little brush. It's supposed to be a pointed liner brush, but I'm not gonna apply liner, and if I did, I would use a much smaller brush than this. Again, keeping with the theme of I just think these brushes are a little bit too big for the eye, but it will work nicely for that inner corner highlight. I'm using the shade Silk Teddy for this, by the way. I already have my brows done, so I'm not gonna use this brow brush. And again, this brush is huge. I mean, look at the size of the brush compared to my actual eyebrow. This is about twice the size of an angled brush that I would typically use for my brows. So I don't know what giant people they designed these eye brushes for, but this is definitely too big for my eyebrows. And I got some pretty big eyebrows, so that's saying something. Before I give you my final thoughts, I do want to point out that I had the names of these 2 brushes switched. I was thinking that the shader brush was the crease brush and the super crease was the shader. Honestly, I loved using this kind of flatter shader brush in my crease. I felt like I had great control and it blended really well. I still think this would be way too huge for a crease brush. If I'm going to use a crease brush that's this large, I want it to be kind of fluffier and not quite so dense. So I definitely just wanted to straighten that out for you, because after I put on my mascara, I realized that I had these 2 kind of switched in my head. Now that I've put these brushes to the test, I'm gonna give you my first impression and my recommendations. First of all, these brushes, obviously, they're very pretty. If you're looking for something that's gonna look nice displayed on your vanity, or if you're like me and you love to take pictures for Instagram of your makeup brushes, these are definitely gonna look gorgeous. They're very inexpensive. I think $10 and under for a really pretty brush like this is very reasonable. However, when you feel these, when you have these in your hand and you feel them, you can tell why they're less expensive. They definitely feel very lightweight, which is great for actual use. I would not say that they feel cheap. They seem to be well made. I haven't had any issues with them shedding when I washed them or when I used them. It seems like they're very sturdy, like the ferrule isn't wobbling around or anything like that. So even though they're inexpensive, I would not say they're cheap. I think that they are great quality for the price. Now let's talk about the brushes that I used today and which ones I like and would recommend and which ones I don't like so much. Let's start with the brushes that were not my favorites. First of all, this big foundation brush. Honestly, it's just way too big. I typically use a foundation brush that's about, I'd say, half or 2/3 this size. I just felt like it was too big. It kind of soaked up a lot of my product. And while the finish was really nice on my face, the finished product, it was just a lot of work. It took a lot more blending than something like my Sigma F80 or my Morphe brush. So this just wasn't my favorite. I think that's a personal preference. I'm just not a fan of these big kind of paddle style brushes for foundation. And when it comes to the eye set, I just think these brushes are way too big. I know that I have a lot of lid space. I have really big eyebrows. And if I think eye brushes are too big, I'm pretty sure that you guys are gonna think they're too big. So while they were nice, I mean, they blended nicely, they didn't shed. I just think that they're too big. As for kind of the middle of the road, I would say this buffer brush that I use for powder, it was just fine. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great. It was just regular. Now let's talk about the brushes that I really did enjoy. I was so surprised by this one. Like I've said previously, I'm not really a fan of these paddle style brushes. And this is actually the contour brush, but I used it for concealer. The one that they recommend for concealer is this little teeny tiny brush, and that's just ridiculously way too small for me. However, when it comes to this contour brush that I use for concealer, I was so pleasantly surprised. It was super easy. It didn't pick up too much of my concealer. I felt like it gave me a really flawless finish. So I'm going to add this to my everyday kind of brush drawer, and I know that I'll be using this in the future. I'm so set on doing my concealer with a sponge, so adding a brush and a paddle brush no less, pretty impressed. Another pleasant surprise is this contour brush. I just thought this would be like the powder brush and just be kind of meh, but I'm really happy with how this applied my bronzer. And coming from somebody who likes a really fluffy bronzer brush, to use something that's smaller and more precise, I think that's really saying something that I like this brush. Now, I'm not gonna say that this stippler will completely replace my e.l.f. small stipple brush, but I am very happy with how this applied my cream blush, and I know that this would be beautiful with other liquids. I am gonna be adding this into my routine. I think it's really soft, it's really pretty, this is a really nice brush. I think this might be my favorite of all the brushes that I tested today. Last but not least, the one eye brush I was really happy with was the shader that I used as a crease brush. I really enjoy this kind of flat but fluffy style for the crease. I feel like it blended really nicely, and yeah, I was just happy with this one. That's it for today's video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these brushes. Have you tried them? Do you want to try them? Leave a comment and let us know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. It's really casual today. It's like top knots and t-shirts. That's basically every day of my life, actually. Whatever. It's never gonna look good. Just accept it and move on. Not a dupe. Let's just get that out of the way. A lot. My earring just fell out. Classic. Blush. Bling brush. It is not too shabby so far. The brush is just too big. What you gonna do? I'm a human. It happens. Think that we don't have all day. You're gonna have to get it together.